Hi there folks, this is Tony for aminutemidnight.com coming to you from New Zealand. With me on the show today I have Stan Deyo, and Stan is a frequent guest on the A Minute to Midnight show, has been for a number of years, so welcome back Stan.
Good to be back. How are you doing down there in the southern hemisphere? Your weather fine?
Yeah, I was in America, for part of your guys' winter, and arrived back here, and it was very hot for a bit, but it hasn't been quite so bad. Not so hot. Recently.
Is that normal? Is that normal for this time of year there?
Yeah, it's sort of up and down really a bit, but it was certainly a bit of a shock to go from freezing temperatures to, temperatures in the high 80s or low 30s Celsius for a few days there. But yeah, I've kind of settled into the weather again.
Yeah.
While I was in America though, Stan, I put out a compilation video of some bits from older shows from you and I talking about your experience in Australia with the UFO project and all of that. And gosh, that video has been, very popular. A lot of people have liked it, a lot of comments and a lot of views and things. So it was certainly interesting. And not that I want to spend tons of time talking about UFOs and things again, but it could be interesting just to mention anything that you do have on that type of subject.
Well, all right. This last week or so, I've been analyzing the Tic Tac UFO photos from the naval ship from the Nimitz crew. And I was curious about something that I've been working on for a number of years about the change in the rate of time passage inside a UFO when it turns a corner.
Yeah.
For us here on the ground, we look up at it, there's a bright light suddenly appears, and then there's a brief, very brief flash, and zip, off it goes at some angle, and then it stops and goes another direction at incredibly high speeds. Well, inside these craft, when they turn that fast, it's something that our physicists and pilots and everything say that's impossible, because when you turn a corner at 20,000 miles an hour, stop on a dime like that, it produces such changes in the inertial forces on your body, the G forces, that it should just crumple the ship up into a little ball and toss it away and everything in it as well. But it doesn't. And these UFOs, they fly in the air, they sail underwater, and of course they work in space as well. So what is happening there is we're seeing a propulsion type that doesn't leave a trail, a wake. Even in infrared photographs, there's nothing like a hot trail behind them. And when you look at it in the FLIR, the infrared photographs of the fighters, you see a kind of an old-timey top, like these tops used to put a string on and throw it on the floor and it'd spin and you'd have this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that seemed to be inside of a bubble of some sort of light. And the actual top part of it was black, at least in the versions of the video that I got. Now, in infrared, it's black and white. On the naval aircraft, it's not full color or anything like that. So I looked at that, and I thought, well, okay, there's no heat trail behind it, so it's not a jet or any of that kind of stuff, or a propeller-driven, which would be impossible anyway. So we're looking at field propulsion. So inside that bubble, there has to be a way to spread over a longer period of time a turning of a corner in hundredths of a second at 20,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to spread out that G-force over a longer period of time. And for that to happen, you have to change the density of space inside that bubble where the craft and the crew are. So when they charge it up with this electromagnetic pulse field and it's artificial gravity, then what they do is they set it so that it charges up everything inside the field to a much higher spin rate. And so that inside the ship, when you turn that corner, at 100 to 200 per second, whatever the people on the ground see, for you, it can take days. And the reason I go to that is the tale we have about three or four Brazilian air officers or guards in a base in Brazil. A few years back, they saw a UFO come down into the paddocks away from the control tower. So this 3 or 4 man team went out to investigate, and they split up, each going a different direction. And they had watches, and so they were going to meet back at this place in so many minutes. Well, all of them except one came back, the sergeant who was in charge of this group. When he did come back a few minutes later, he stumbled upon them. He had a 5-day growth of beard all of a sudden. His watch was set at the wrong time. I don't know whether they had days or dates, but the thing is, he thought he'd been gone for 5 days looking at this light out there. And he said all he could remember is he saw the light, and it was on the ground, and he started walking toward it. And as he did, of course, then he started feeling the effects of the field, and time started to alter for him. Now, that tells you that the rate of time passage, which is really a molecular vibration rate and distances traveled by atoms as they expand and contract, that as it increased the energy like that, that inside the field you could spend many more times, of life, heartbeats and whatever, than outside the field. So his 15 minutes or whatever to the guys outside was 5 days. And if you count up all the days, the hours in a day and stuff like that, and the minutes, 3,600, 24 times, and 5 times that. The rate of time passage inside that field was over 400,000 times faster than us out here. Now that was at the edge of the field. Now when they do this inside the craft, when it starts to turn that corner, then when they get those tremendous G forces, as they turn at 20,000 miles an hour, turn a right angle, then the inertia of all that is amortized, over, let's say, 100 to 400,000 times, so that it reduces the G forces down to very comfortable. He was on the edge of the field, and the rate of time there would probably have been different than inside the craft, because the field is a gradient going into the core of the craft. Why is that important? Well, when we have propulsion that can do that, we can also use that field to stretch time out or compress time for people that are ill and need an emergency treatment. If we could use that kind of technology on the ground, we would set up a room where we could put them in the field, and inside the field, reversing the field, a few minutes for them would be days or months outside while the surgeons tried to figure out a way to operate on them. Just a simple thing that could be used for. I look at this and I say, well, if this kind of time passage is like that, then I remember in the Bible, in 2 Peter 3:8, Peter saying, "But do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord, 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day." Now, I'm a bit conflicted about what that actually means, but it says 1 day with the Lord at his time when he's in the heavens. It seems that 1 day of his time is 1,000 years of our time. Now, if that's the case, when he was about to leave the earth after his resurrection, he says to the disciples, "I'm going to leave you a comforter, the Holy Spirit. I'm going to be gone, and I'll see you later." To the thieves on the cross next to him when he was dying, he said, "This day you'll be with me in heaven." And so that would indicate that they were going straight away. Now, if time passes for God in heavens like that, so that 1,000 years of our times passes only 1 year for him, he looks down at us, and I guess he has to look at 1,000 years of time and have some kind of a super microscope or something so he can compress time down to look at us, so when we're praying to him, that he's hearing. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's a really hard concept to get your head around, that's for sure. The whole time thing is.
And then, of course, okay, if one of our days is 1,000 years for him, okay, then that means he's got all the time in the world to look at us real time and see when we're praying and answer prayer. But I think he left the comforter for us in his absence to deal with the time differential between heaven and earth where we are. So when I pray now, I pray through the Holy Spirit to him and say, look, I hope you get this message in time, whatever, but here's my prayer. And since I've started doing that, a lot of things have worked with the using the Holy Spirit as a medium to reach him and to cause things to happen, like healing of things and that kind of stuff. Strange. So anyway, that technology does produce a quandary, as to what the rate of time passage really is. Because if you think about it, if we have a tick-tock clock out in the hallway, old grandfather clock going tick, 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 you're watching that pendulum go this way and that way. And then you say, well, okay, while it did that, a cesium atom changed its energy structure 32 million times or 32 billion times a second. So it expanded and contracted. So you're comparing distances traveled, or by the shell of the atom, and by the pendulum. So really, time, as we measure it, is a kind of a dimensionless thing. Really, it's just a ratio of distances, and correcting that, and in Einstein's equation and everything, you can see the universe is just a lot younger than we thought it was. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that it is interesting. Like I say, for me, it's just so hard to get my head around, or even like you were saying with the space ships, UFOs or whatever, wherever they come from, the fact that they can go so fast and turn so sharply and all of those things which people have seen for years, and there has to be some explanation for that.
Well, there's an example I should give to that analogy about the time difference in the spaceship. Let us play a mind game. Let's have a 50-story tall building. We get up on top of it, and let's say that we've made a thick titanium ball that's hollow inside of it, though it's a thick shell, so that it could drop 50 stories and not be dented or anything. And inside this, we're going to put a chair on one side of it, and we're going to strap an astronaut into that chair inside this titanium ball. And then we're going to put that titanium ball inside of another titanium ball with oil, in between the two shells to act as a lubricant. And then we're going to shove it off the side of the building, and it's going to drop 50 stories. Now, normally, that would bounce, the titanium ball within a ball, they'd bounce on the ground and maybe dent if they couldn't withstand the structural fatigue, but they can. So it hits the ground, and inside the inner sphere is spinning like mad, and it's putting G-forces on this guy over a period of time, but not instantly stopping. It's allowing it to be amortized over a period of time, and when that time is up, he can open the door and get out of his two titanium balls. But it's allowing the change, in all that extra inertia, gravitational forces, to be spread out over 300 or 400 times, so he can withstand it. And that's kind of the analogy to fit to the altering of the passage of time rate inside of the field that drives these craft. Anyway.
That's interesting. Yeah, one of the things I always question is, there are so many of these UFO sightings and people being abducted supposedly, and I mean it's been going on for years and years, but why are there so few clear pictures? They're all like sort of blown up, magnified something, so nothing's that clear. After all this time, why haven't we got more photos that are really, you can clearly see the thing, instead of having to look and think, what is that? And I've kind of always got this question mark around it.
Well, two things affect that. One is that in the early days of flying saucers, being sighted in the 50s and 60s, people had cameras. They didn't have the camera phones. Mm-hmm. And they had to have a camera ready and filming it, with a fast enough speed in it that they could capture it.
Yep.
Well, that's why they were blurred in those days and grainy. You try to blow them up from a distance, that kind of stuff. The other thing is that craft are a field around them. it's like a bumblebee. You know, he spins his wings and he creates a shell of air around him, moving around the bumblebee. But he doesn't fly with the wings. He flies with the shell by directing the shell this way or that way by the pressure of his wings inside that sphere. So if you have an ionized, a charged field created by electrical currents in these toroidal coils that drive the craft, they're going to alter and put like a filter around the craft, which is going to make it a little bit blurry. Having said that, some of the earlier photographs that did get taken by people that had the right kind of camera, the right kind of film, at the right time in the early days, there were some very sharp photos made. And
that's my question: is most of the best UFO photos are old ones? Why?
Yeah.
We've got all the technology now, and everyone's running around with cell phones and digital cameras and different things. And then supposedly, if you're seeing craft hovering, you hear people talking about seeing craft hovering. Well, surely when a craft's hovering, if you've got a cell phone or something, you should be able to snap a pretty good shot, I would have thought.
Well, it may be that the technology has improved since the 50s. Some of those crafts were ours in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. But, perhaps a new kind of field is being used, new frequency, and that's running the modern pictures. I know at one of the early photographs, one of the classics of the UFOs going back into the 50s, it was black and white, and there was a house and some terrain underneath it, and it was in the air above this house, and the guy took a picture. Well, it was very sharp outline, obviously a flying saucer-looking thing, and it wasn't too blurry at all.
Yeah.
And over the top of it was something like people thought it was an aerial, kind of flexing as it moved because it kind of bent.
Yeah.
What it was really was a vortex in the air, which is what our time propulsion did.
Yeah.
It creates a vortex inside the craft and throughout the air around it. And at certain speeds, it's like water running down a drain. It makes that little swirly up in the air over the top of it.
Yeah.
That was so clear, those photographs back then, you could see that, but not now. And some of the ones that we're taking now are not like up close with sunlight on it and glistening off of it. They are like bright lights. So when you look into a bright light to photograph it, you're going to get fuzz in most cameras, and certainly in the cell phones, things like that. I've heard that question asked recent times, and that's about the only explanation I can give.
Because it's interesting too that the craft that people are seeing, they've changed a lot. Like, you have the classic TR3 shape and triangular things. Of course, in those early photos you were talking about, they're all like flying saucers type of shape, but now there's all sorts of different types of shapes. So I guess the question then becomes, who's making them?
Definitely. And remember this, when I was with that project down in Australia with Dr. Teller, the aliens, the fallen ones that we were dealing with, they came through like portals. They were sent here by God to wait until the time of their judgment here on the earth. Now, they knew that there was going to be a battle. These bad guys did. And at the Armageddon battle.
Yeah.
But when they got cast through, they didn't have a lot of technology with them, or the manufacturing complexes they needed to manufacture these weapons and things they're going to use to fool people and to fight with God when he arrives. So we knew that they needed infrastructure, and so they traded us like anti-gravity and some other things in medicine, things like that, and molecular physics, in turn for us building bases for them under the water, at the pole, and in mountains and underground. And we would build them these facilities and stock them with manufacturing technology so that they could then make what they needed without us. And eventually, over decades, they were able to then build very exotic new technology. So as the technology they were developing themselves progressed, it went way beyond what we had done. Humans had found out how to make a toroidal coil and interlocked with another one at right angles to it, and how to make plasma drivers for crude flying saucers. One of the things that we knew was that if you have that flying saucer, it's like the George Adamski photograph, which had 3 balls on the bottom of the saucer. You have to have 3 points so that you can vary the rate at which the plasma coming over the top of the wing, the electrons coming into these balls. You have to vary the rate on one of them to tilt the craft in a new direction, because you need 3 points to form a plane of direction. And that's why we had 3 then. And then as time progressed, I don't know whether our team built the TR3 type things or not, without the help of the aliens or the follow ones, but those did come along, and surprise, surprise, they had on the triangular points 3 points to orient the craft, but they also had a big light source ball, hemisphere in the center of the craft underneath as well. I'm not exactly sure how that differed from the ones that we originally did with the plasma systems, but they had the 3 points. But now, if you look at things like Tic Tac and like just spheres that were over in the theaters of war over in the Middle East, we photographed these spheres about the size of a basketball with no wings and no control surface at all, zipping along over the terrain. I actually saw one of these, and it was silver colored here over Colorado Springs when I was at lunch one day out there, and I looked up and caught it flying through the clouds and then disappearing somewhere over Cheyenne Mountain. So again, different technology to steer it without these obvious 3 points of reference for a new plane of orientation. So that tells you there that the development of these things, some by us and obviously a lot more by the aliens, has progressed to a new high that we don't share, because in the late 70s, the humans were kicked out of all the bases we gave them. And so what technology we have that's somewhat advanced, we were allowed to have and only allowed to use it to a certain point. They've still got control of us and our technology.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think, what was his name? Phil Snider, was that the guy?
Yeah.
Talked about the war and people being shot up and different things.
At Dulce Base, yeah.
Yeah,
at Dulce in New Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's a similar type of thing that happened in Australia as well, I take it.
Yeah, I remember down there in Australia, I think I was still down there when it happened. There was a report of a triangular craft that was apparently in trouble. It was floating above the ground and floating across a highway. I think it's the one between Melbourne and New South Wales. But, there were reports of it in the paper. You can look it up down there. But it told us that these craft were then viable and were working, and that particular one had troubles, and then it disappeared or whatever. But and that's going back some time. I don't know how these cigar-shaped things, these Tic Tac things, work. I mean, they go underwater, I know that they're using field propulsion to do that. So it doesn't matter whether you're in water or whether you're in space. One of the things that I still haven't figured out the mechanics for is when they go underwater and go down, hundreds or thousands of feet, the pressure down there is absolutely enough to crush a ship normally. But maybe because of the field and the altering of the rate of time passage within it, they can withstand the pressure, under the ocean. They don't seem to fly as fast underwater as they do above water, but still, they're a multimedia type device. What was that guy's name? Stan, another Stan that wrote a book, Behold a Pale Horse. Yeah. I talked to him anyway. He and I corresponded, and we sent stuff back and forth to each other, details and stuff, data that we had. And he said when he served on a Navy ship, he was actually on one that he was up on deck toward the bow, and he could see a light under the water, and it was coming up close to the surface and making the surface bow up over like it was over probably a saucer shape from what he said. And at that time he was an eyewitness to it, and he said that definitely that was something not from our technology. And then of course he went on to write his book, and eventually he died. But that he was a witness to that, and it was saucer shaped, I'm pretty sure, from what he said, and it made light. Why does it make light? It makes light because the field is much more energetic than the surrounding air. It's vibrating at a different rate, and so that's producing ions from the air, exciting them and making this light. I even saw some recent stuff filmed in, one of our oceans here. What was it? He was filming, I think, in off the Bahamas, somewhere like that. The guy that does the expedition shows, on the TV shows, something about expeditions, and he had it, but they were chasing a UFO light that came up out of the ocean. They were filming at night, and they filmed it. It was a good film, and so that does prove that these things glow under the water as well as in the air.
Oh, just to reiterate for people that don't know, Matt, what your actual view of what the aliens or so-called aliens are, because, I mean, anyone that hasn't heard you before might not know.
Well, I'm a student of the Bible, and the presence of these beings is part of what I consider, in interpreting the Bible, is part of the great deceptions to deceive even the very elect of this age into following Satan rather than Jesus. And having worked on the program, to our own program, Human's Own program down in Australia, to build these kind of craft, I was able to put together in my mind, right, what they are going to do and have been doing is generating a story for humans, good guys, aliens, bad guy aliens, and our elder brothers from space that are going to help us, so that when they've got their technology ready to fool the people into following them into a new world order, a dictatorship, people will be fooled because they'll think that these are friends of Jesus. In fact, I'm sure they will probably say he's just a brother, one of our brothers that came here, to get you guys ready and raise your consciousness. And we can even show you videos or 3D, projections of the crucifixion because we were there with him. And so this is, they're going to have this deception when the people of Earth are ready, not just the governments, because the governments don't count. It's the people. When the people of Earth think that we're going to be nuked into, extinction with a new nuclear war, probably over in the Middle East, with the conflict against Israel. When people are frightened that it's going to happen, they're going to be saying, can someone help us? And they're going to reach out for someone with technology and the strength to bring peace and to get rid of the bad guys, the bad aliens, bad Russians, bad whoever. And that's when we will have this deception put upon us. They will land and become, obvious and say, look, well, if you'll just turn us over, turn yourself over to us and let us form a world government and appoint one of your people to head it, and we'll give him technology and devices so that he can properly administer the planet safely and fairly. And we have the ability in our craft to stop all nuclear weapons. We've tested it, at the Air Force bases of the United States where we've turned off the nuclear weapons from the air. And so we can guarantee you there won't be a nuclear war. And so this kind of a deception is going to be put upon the people of Earth when they are in a panic, probably because of the global economy collapsing, which is somewhat imminent, probably because of threats of a large asteroid passing nearby, threats of problems from the sun, throwing off various bits and pieces of solar wind, thicker clouds of it, and increasing shortly, and the threat of coronal mass ejections, destroying our power grids wherever it hits. All these kind of things, diseases, COVID, new COVID, and the Chinese have got several other versions of it now. All these things are threatening the people of Earth with loss of income, with death, with starvation, with shortage of water, or in some cases too much water and snow. So all these things are above our ability to handle as far as people know. And so when Jesus speaks of a great deception, do not be deceived. If they come and say, come visit us in this secret place here in the desert or somewhere else, we're your friends and we're going to help you, don't believe it, because he says, when my team comes, everyone will know it. Every living thing will know it from coast to coast, east to west, across the entire planet like a flash of lightning. There won't be any go to this secret place meetings type stuff. So that's how I look at these things. The fallen ones are those that have been cast down here by God from the heavens. They were the rebellion against him. And they are here on the planet making weapons of war and using humans to help them develop this stuff, to form a equipped army of advanced technology to actually fight with Jesus when he comes. And we know that the description of the weapons used at the Armageddon battle are some sort of a nuclear device or devices, because when it hits them, it'll be a fervent heat that will melt the eyes out of their sockets while they're yet standing and burn the flesh right off. It'll melt it off their body, their bones. So
yeah,
we know
that's in Zechariah chapter 12, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah, and so that tells you that really advanced technology. Perhaps some other time we can talk about the fact that the Indians, Asian India, they have legends of flying crafts, Vimana and little g gods flying around and having a war. One of them lived in Iran, and another one lived there in India. And we have found two cities that were destroyed when two of these gods had a war with each other that sounded like a nuclear war. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Okay, Mohenjo-daro along the Indus River, when they first started excavating, they found skeletons all laying down, facing the same direction, and they found pottery that was melted, the glass from a fervent heat like a nuclear blast, and there was a higher background radiation in those pieces than the surrounding territory. So that told us that at some point way back in time there was a war between super beings here on the planet, and that might have been before the Earth became waste and void or something. I don't know, but definitely before the Garden of Eden time. So we're facing a new period of time where we're going to have a war between God and those beings that are cast down here. I don't know why all this had to happen that way, but it's proof that advanced technology, really advanced, that we can just barely understand now, will be used in the Armageddon crisis. And there will be a lot of, destruction of those who are allied against Jesus and his army. Hopefully
every eye will see when the real Jesus does appear, as you say. There's not going to be any questions, whereas with any false kind of counterfeit, there will be. It's not going to be. People will be deceived, but when the real Jesus comes, it's not going to be any doubt about it. That's the way Scripture points it. Just one thing I was just thinking that's kind of not directly related, but sort of is a little bit. There's a Scripture in Revelation that talks about in those days men will seek death and not be able to find it. I find that a real interesting concept. Have you got any thoughts on what that might be meaning?
I've thought about that too, and I don't have an answer. I don't know how that would happen. I mean, that's up to God and how He does things. But that sounds kind of like zombies, if you follow that in the press, living dead. And I don't know how that would happen, but that's maybe something that God causes to happen, or maybe the fallen ones that are here will be changing people with DNA so that they live forever. I mean, they're talking about it now, adding something to it, but
the transhumanist movement.
Yeah, but how would that? If somebody used a nuke on a city, I mean, that's pretty much tearing things all apart, no matter what DNA you've got. Gunshots, knives, anything that causes you to bleed, diseases.
Unless somebody's put themselves, off into a machine, kind of, so they become like a consciousness in some sort of computer machine, like Ray Kurzweil and those people are talking about. In which case, I don't know, because it's hard to, we're spirit, soul, and body. So when people die, their spirit's not there anymore, and you can't really bring it back. So I don't know. I do wonder about that, whether, people have been modified, or, the whole merger of humans and machines, whether that has something to do with it, that those people may seek death and not be able to die. I don't know. It's one of those, it's hard to get your head around things too.
Well, maybe, maybe what you're saying is that they'll try to die and their body will, I don't know, maybe disappear and their soul will appear. I mean, when Jesus rose the saints, in the streets of Jerusalem when he rose from the dead, they were human, and they were reproduced from the DNA in the dirt or whatever. But maybe it's ghosts or something like that. Or, I joke about like zombies, like the bodies are ripped apart, but they aren't working like normal bodies. They're held erect and function by some other field or something. But it is something that's I don't understand.
Yes, no, it is. There's so many of these type of things that are very difficult to know what they mean.
Did you? I know we talked about this once briefly a long time ago. Does the rapture occur at all in your understanding of the Bible?
I haven't got an absolutely firm view on the rapture. I'm kind of open to possibilities, but I think for me, what they call a PreWTH theory probably makes the most sense, where I know that'll be very different than a lot of other people. Everyone that listens has different views on this, but to me, it's like I think we're there for most of what happens in the book of Revelation, but just before, God kind of pulls out all the stops and launches all the bowls of judgment. I think the rapture may occur just prior to that, and that could happen very quickly, all those judgments. But I don't have a firm stance on it.
Well, I wondered, regardless of whether you're pre-trib or mid-trib or all that kind of stuff, I wondered if there were scriptures that were Old Testament, not New Testament, talking about this rapture event. And the reason was because, I've debated with Theosophical Society leaders in audiences about whether there's a rapture or not. And they say, yes, there's going to be a lot of people taken off the planet and distributed among other worlds to get their vibes right, to teach them how to live in harmony with nature.
Theosophical Society, I mean, that's like Alice Bailey's.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're way off anyway.
Yeah. But they're allowing for a lot of people to disappear and saying, don't panic about it. Okay, now I went back to the Old Testament and I said, well, is there some kind of a thing that points to a rapture? Well, the wedding ceremony in Galilee definitely is a type of rapture story. Before that, when Abraham sent his servants over to a foreign land to get a bride for his son Isaac, it's that type of a thing. They went over, got the bride in a foreign land, which could be the earth, and then brought it back to be with his son. And they had to pay a price for the bride over in that foreign land. If you look at the Israeli love story, there's a book called The Israeli Love Story. They tell about this, the procedure, the Seder for a marriage like Jesus had, or his neighbors had in Galilee. And there, if a guy wanted to marry a girl, he'd tell his dad, look, I like that one. Do you think she's cool? Yeah, okay. He'd say, okay, well, go make a deal with her father. And the dad would then go over and make a deal with the father. Look, I want my son to marry your daughter, and here's a payment, a dowry, which was for the bride, so that she had something in case of emergency. It really wasn't, so you're buying the bride. It was a gift to say you have this in case you need it for your own causes, your husband dies or whatever. And they would shake hands, and the father of the bride and the father of the groom would put their left hand, I think it's their left hand, under their thigh and shake hands on it and to have a drink of wine. That was sealing the deal. And then off would go the dad, tell his son, okay, you're now engaged. You got from now until a year from now, anytime in that period of time, to go get your bride when I tell you. And then he would say to his son, now, you need to build her an add-on, house, home, whatever, onto my house, and prepare her place to live with you. And when that's done, then you'll be ready to go, and I'll tell you when. In the meantime, the bride has got to, keep herself chaste, and every night she and her bridesmaids have to stay up until midnight with the candles burning in the window to show the wedding party that are going to come with with the bridegroom to steal her away in secret from her father. And most of the time in real practice, what would happen is, when the father of the groom says, okay, it's time to go get your bride, it would be at nighttime. he would go over to her house, and he would stand outside the door and send his friends in to get her and her bridesmaids. And the father and mother, of course, would peek out the door to be sure it's the right guy stealing their daughter. And then, okay, take him on out there into the darkness. And there would be a heck of a commotion going on out there. There would be laughter and, joking, whatever. And this whole wedding ceremony and procedure would go down through the town. And people in the town knew something was going down, but they weren't part of it. And then, those that were invited for the wedding later would, of course, be led into the wedding ceremony. And then the bride and groom, but before they leave her house, they have a two-man seat carry thing, like a lifter up above the ground, and two men carried like a wheelbarrow type thing with her sitting in it to lift her up from the ground, so that she would go meet her husband, go with him to the wedding ceremony, but in the air. So they would then go to the party, and the bridegroom and bride would be put into their wedding room there, and they would have sex to show that they had done so, and they would pass out a linen that had been soiled with the blood of the hymen, and say, "Okay, it is done." And then 7 days they would have this feasting and joyous celebration, whatever. Now, if you look at 7 days, it's like 7 years even. That starts to tell you that it's a model for the tribulation. For the rapture at the early parts of the tribulation. For 7 days, the bride is away training or celebrating, whatever, and will come with the Messiah at the end of time to set the record straight and get rid of the bad guys. The carrying of the bride in that seat, that two-man carry seat, catching her up in the air and taking her to the ceremony in the air, speaks of an airborne rapture. That was in the Old Testament, which couldn't have been really ruined by human hands, screwing up what was said by the Old Testament saints and prophets. That was the oldest record I could find that would indicate even a rapture type thing. And the wedding ceremony is perfect for what we're talking about. Anyway, that
is interesting, because obviously there'll be, like I say, I can see the comments section blowing up over this one. Because there are people get really adamant one way or another with their views. I kind of look at it and I think, well, whenever it is, if like I say, for me, I've always leaned more towards the possibility of what they call a pre-wrath rapture, but I just don't really discount any of the possibilities. I think we just got to be prepared anyway. Whenever it is that our time is up, whether it's being raptured or whether it's dying or whatever. But I hadn't actually heard what you've just said before, which is a really interesting, additional kind of thing to add to the whole debate on the view of it all. That is a very interesting concept. So,
okay, it's a concept. I like it, of course, from my viewpoint. But the thing, as you were just saying, is this: whether it occurs at the beginning of the tribulation or in the middle, or whatever your viewpoint on it is, Jesus is coming back for those who love him and want to be with him. So we need to look up every day and say, "Hey, Hineni," which means "Lord, here I am" in Hebrew, is what Moses said at the burning bush. Hineni, and you live the good life, do what you're supposed to do, keep yourself chaste and clean by the word, and look up every day. He's coming sometime soon.
Well, that's the thing, and who knows exactly what we're going to go through in the meantime. There's an awful lot of stuff that I think's already happened that a lot of, dare I say it, the people that are really strong pre-rapture, pre-tribulation rapture people never thought we'd go through stuff like we've already been through. But hey, I think it's going to continue to get much worse, much more difficult, and I guess we just got to be prepared. And if we're raptured away at some point, then we don't lose anything if we're prepared. And if we aren't, we still don't lose anything if we're prepared, because our hearts are set to endure till the end, or whenever that end is for us as individuals. To me, that's what I think is more important in knowing if there's a pre-trib rapture or a mid-trib or a pre-wrath, or there's no rapture until the return of Jesus. It's more important to be prepared all the time, whatever the situation is, to me.
Of course. And even Jesus doesn't know the day or the hour.
That's an interesting one too, because I when people say that, like you've just said, I tend to think of it this way, that when Jesus was in his earthly body on earth, he didn't know the time, the day or the hour, but now that he's, not here as a walking the earth human, he may know that, the day and the hour. That's how I look at it.
Well, he may, but I think sticking to the wedding ceremony, which he was, he knew it well because his first miracle was the wedding at Cana. But what you're doing, if you read the prophecies, read the scriptures, and know the signs of the season, the time, and you can see that we are in the season, it would appear.
Yes.
Sometime during this period of time that we are alive here, it's going to be the tribulation.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm looking at the moment is Israel. That's God's timepiece.
Yeah.
What happens to Israel tells us where we are in his whole plan.
And
right now, the nations are gathering up around Israel to destroy her. And by a miracle, she's going to be saved, and there will be time then to go into the tribulation period for the the rest of the period. One of the things that I'm looking for is a very specific sign of us being in that season is the destruction of Damascus in Syria.
Yep.
And we know logically, military reasons, all kinds of things, why Damascus has to be destroyed, because the Iranians who are wanting to destroy not only Israel but America, they have been storing weapons, missiles in 10 different sites that are public knowledge around Damascus. And about a 750 kiloton nuclear device on Damascus would reach all of those outlying warehouses and manufacturing plants they've got there in Syria. And this is the Iranians using Syria to do this. So every tick of the clock, I expect either the United States, somebody in the Mediterranean fleet, a military without White House approval, nuking Damascus, or the Israelis saying, we've had enough. We don't have time to let you sneak down over the Golan Heights a couple of minutes with several missiles that we can only kill so many of them with Iron Dome at one time, and one of your nukes may get to us. So when we know you've got the nuclear bombs there in Damascus, we're going to stop you. The IDF has already been bombing little sites around there that were refining uranium and stuff for the bombs in Syria. And, if that happens, well, if we're here to see it, you'll know that's telling you this is the season of Christ coming for his bride, whenever that is. It's not a day or anything. It's just a season.
Yes, I agree. And there is, so much that's pointing to that being the case. So,
what about the numbering? We've got it all set up. Mohammed bin Salman, Prince bin Salman, and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, they've all been setting up peace agreements between Arab nations around Israel. They've got at least 40 in their anti-terrorism league of these Arab nations. And they've already put into place business plans for the people that have signed the Abraham Accords already for the countries. But they've already drawn up one for Gaza, so that when Israel stops, the invasion, that there's a business plan for putting Gaza back together without terrorists in the government. And so Jared Kushner have already drafted this business plan and are ready to put it in place when this crisis is over. And it's they're going to put $1 billion into restructuring Gaza and electing proper people, not terrorists, for their government. But this is leading up to a solution of the world economic system, which is where the money is going to come from. It's going to be a digital system, and Mohammed bin Salman's been involved in that. Jared Kushner's been involved in it. They put money into various organizations that are developing the hardware for a digital economic system for the planet. All these things are coming into place right now together, and this tells you that we are pregnant with the prophecies starting to come true, and a new world order, a dictatorial structure forming. So just, whether you're here or not, if you're not here, it doesn't matter. But if you're here and you see this digital system coming up and they say to you, hey, Fred, that mortgage you've got on the house, you now need to have a number and an income and digital income, which we'll give you. But that's so you can pay land taxes and other taxes, and you can own property and you can earn money digitally. If you don't do that, then you have to leave the cities and leave the country because you're not going to be able to trade without it. And that's all these things are just, they're happening right now. Formation of these in the press. So people need to look and see what is happening in the Middle East. Mohammed bin Salman formed a 40-nation anti-terrorist coalition, and they're military. They've got tanks, armies, weapons, planes, and they say it's to fight terrorism. But when you read the fine print in this organization, which you can see in Wikipedia, it says these are terrorists. Who are the terrorists? Anybody that is against Islam. And that's the United States and Israel to start with. So they have already formed an army against us while we've kind of had our lattes and watched movies and whatever and didn't realize that they were building this army to destroy us.
Yeah, well, that's another interesting angle. I guess, there are just so many things. It's all, so many pieces of the puzzle coming together very quickly. Anyway, Stan, I guess we should wrap up here. But that's been a very interesting discussion. I'm sure there'll be a lot of a firestorm and the different angles of all the different things we've covered. But hey, it's been a great and interesting discussion, and I think that's what's important, is people, are able to listen, and we can all be very opinionated on things, but it's always good to listen to other people's opinions and weigh them up. So
absolutely, we don't want to fight amongst ourselves.
No,
we all agree that the Lord is coming for us sometime or other.
Yeah,
and let's encourage each other. Let's don't tear ourselves apart. We need to be together now. So your timing on the rapture doesn't matter that much. It's really that we support each other and follow the scriptures and the warnings. If we're here, to avoid that numbering system for sure.
Absolutely, that is a bottom line point. If you read Revelation, anybody that does take the mark of the beast is damned for eternity, and there's no real questions about it. So that is the thing. Whenever that comes, and it, like you say, all the pieces are falling together for it to come soon, I think. And we really have to know in advance that if we are here and there isn't any rapture first, then we are going to refuse it and say no. We'll take death rather than be part of that system. Yeah,
and this beast that they speak of there, I think that this artificial intelligence that they developed in China and in Sweden and the United States and whatever, Great Britain, that is going to be running the world government, and that's going to be scary.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Well, I guess we better leave it there. There's so much more we really could talk about on it, but we've gone quite a long way. So, yeah, thank you again, Stan, for being on the show.
Oh, you bet, and thank you for doing the witness like you do.
And we'll have to do maybe another show before too long, and we can carry on some of this.
Yeah, especially if the current events tell us, okay, here's another sign that just happened. Maybe we better chat about it. Yeah.
All right.
Take care.
Yeah, cheers, Stan. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, folks, if you want to leave comments on this show, that's always good, and people can offer their opinions, but just please be nice to each other, and, try not to be condescending and so on. So you can find Stan, by the way, at standeyo.com, and don't forget us, minutetomidnight.com is where you'll find all our shows and articles and so forth. So God bless, and God willing, we'll be back with another show in a few days' time.